Welcome back, horror hunters, crypt creepers, and scream queens. It is I, Gavin Tripplehorne, aka Ghoulish Gavin. And I'd like to start this podcast a little differently. After the severed hand that had been anonymously sent to me turned out inexplicably to be mine, the police wanted a word. Now, I can understand it from their side. Body part shows up, must have been attached to someone at some point, and I'm a suspect until they can rule me out. The fingerprint situation just confuses things for them. I've never found the police to be open-minded when it comes to the strange and unusual. They need to watch more horror. So I may have accidentally left my phone recording in my jacket pocket during my little chat with Detective Sergeant Amelia Wyrd. The quality's not great, a little muffled, but you need to hear this.
Interview commencing at 2:34 p.m. Detective Sergeant Amelia Wyrd conducting.
Is that how you start every conversation?
State your full name for the record.
Gavin James Tripplehorne, a.k.a. Ghoulish Gavin.
Real name only, Mr. Tripplehorne. So, I have a severed hand in forensics with your fingerprints. Care to explain?
Well, as you can see, I have 2 hands and 10 digits. Care to explain that?
You've put under occupation podcaster.
That's an occupation?
If you say so, Mr. Tripplehorne. What kind of podcast is it?
A horror one about lost and forgotten classics. Tell me, DS Ward, have you ever heard of the horror icon Viktor Crowe?
Do you have many listeners, Mr. Tripplehorne?
I'm in the process of building a following. You see, I used to have a blog, and I'm in the middle of transitioning into the audio realm of...
Do you think a little stunt like this would attract more listeners? Especially horror ones?
A stunt like what?
I've seen frauds before, Mr. Tripplehorne, all kinds of elaborate hoaxes. And unfortunately, in these times, everything has become content. A prank drives online traffic, but it also wastes a lot of police time. Or more importantly, my time.
Wait a minute, are you saying I did this?
It would certainly help boost your little podcast, wouldn't it?
I'm not bloody Howard Stern. Gavin's Graveyard Gold has integrity.
The hand has been sent away for further tests to establish whether it's real or a very good fake. I would ask that until I receive the results, you remain in the area.
I know my rights.
And I know the law, Mr. Tripplehorne. I'll be in touch.
And there you have it, deadheads. Detective Sergeant Amelia Wyrd clearly has it in for me. But I promise you, this was not a hoax. I swear on my grave, I had nothing to do with it. Maybe whoever or whatever is behind this wants to stop us from digging into the mystery of Viktor Crowe. And I have a creeping suspicion they're not done yet. But that's not going to stop me. So let's dive into this week's subject, and hopefully I'll emerge on the other side with all my limbs attached. We last left poor Viktor arriving on the shores of England in the winter of 1956. Penniless, alone, but finally free, he made his way to London to make his fortune and fulfill his artistic destiny. A year later, he was slopping out toilets backstage at a Soho music hall. On stage were the dying embers of a once great British tradition, the music hall act. Magicians, ventriloquists, comics, acrobats who had performed to sold-out theatre crowds now plied their trade in front of rowdy, drunken audiences. The lure of television had killed music halls, and Viktor was there to witness their dying breath. But he still longed for the stage. He knew he could enthrall the crowds with his tales of horror and the macabre. Each night he would plead with the stage manager to give him a chance, and each night the door would be slammed in his face. Until a nervous magician, the great Splendorifico, waited in the wings for his act to begin, but he was missing his assistant. Viktor was sent to rouse her from the dressing room, but instead he found a grisly crime scene. The magician's assistant slumped in front of the dressing room mirror, throat slit, the word spendrifo smeared in blood across her contorted reflection. Her wide-open eyes were fixed in horror on a stuffed monkey dressed as a harlequin, standing on the dressing room table beside her, the bloody knife clenched in its frozen paw. Viktor didn't call for help right away. He was too transfixed by the horrific scene. He stood, absorbing every strange detail. The assistant's petrified look, the stuffed monkey's fixed grin, the misspelt magician's name in blood. In the chaos that followed, the great Splendorifico was dragged away by the police, but the bill still had 20 minutes to fill, and the crowd was particularly raucous. In desperation, the stage manager turned to Viktor and finally gave him his chance. Viktor took to the stage to a chorus of boos and jeers. The crowd wanted magic, and Viktor gave it to them. Without rehearsal, without a script, he improvised a tragic tale of woe inspired by the horrific scene he had just witnessed. The masses were silenced by this intense and bizarre performance, Viktor taking on several roles, including the monkey. After 20 minutes, the act ended, to silence. Was Viktor's career over before it had a chance to begin? Then came clapping from deep in the crowd. A tall, statuesque young woman stood and applauded loudly, and soon the stunned audience joined in. Riotous applause followed and hit Viktor like a wave. He had truly arrived. The tragic murder of the magician's assistant was quickly solved by the police. An act of jealousy, a love triangle, with the illiterate stage manager led away in handcuffs. But what was truly weird was that no one could explain the stuffed monkey. Where had it come from? How had it got the knife that the stage manager insisted he'd hidden in the magician's box of tricks to implicate him further? As Viktor left the theatre that night, one person waited for him at the stage door. The statuesque woman who had led the applause. This was Julia Regina Humboldt V, and she had been searching for someone with Viktor's talents for years. We could and will spend a whole episode on the erstwhile Lady Julia Regina Humboldt V, but let's stick with young Viktor for now. It still startles me today that Viktor was only 21 when he wrote, directed and starred in his debut feature, Mask of the Vampire. He had some experience writing, having adapted Dracula for his theatre troupe back in Prague, but this was different. This was all Viktor. Mask of the Vampire was also my first experience of Viktor Crowe on the big screen. I was also 21, an awkward young man caught between the UK's goth and indie scenes. I looked like the love child of Robert Smith from The Cure and Blur's Damon Albarn, if you can imagine such an abomination. Even back then, in the mid-90s, Viktor Crowe's work was incredibly hard to come by. I attended a secret screening advertised in one of my favourite horror magazines, Print is Dead. I still have a copy of that issue at number 47, autumn 1995. The film, Seven, is on the cover. 5 out of 5 gravestones for that Fincher classic. Now here it is, on page 23. It reads, "Calling all classic horror fiends, don't miss your chance to see a true enigma. A film not seen in the UK for over 20 years, only known print in existence. Like vampires, entrance is by invitation only." You then had to call a number and answer a few basic horror questions to win an invitation, and were then given the date, time and location. It was midnight in November, in an abandoned railway arch near Vauxhall in London. I turned up along with 100 other horrorphiles, expecting to maybe see F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu or Vampyros Lesbos. Instead, we witnessed a scratched and worn worker's print of Viktor Crowe's Mask of the Vampire. Even through all those print imperfections, you could tell that this was a glorious Technicolor masterpiece. The framing, the performances, the gothic writing and setting mixed with pop art-inspired set design. It was unlike any horror I'd seen before. This was horror catnip to the assembled crowd. Even back then, seeing any Viktor Crowe film was a rare treat. Unfortunately, this was to be the last screening of this particular print. The heat of the ancient 35mm projector, 100 fans crammed into the enclosed archway, all smoking like Bill Hicks, and the temporary canvas screen combined into a dangerously combustible mix. As the credits rolled, the overworked projector caught fire, and acrid black smoke quickly filled the archway. We poured into the cold London night, lungs burning with toxic fumes, and in that life-threatening moment, my love of Viktor Crowe was born. Bankrolled by Julia Regina Humboldt V and the Humboldt Foundation, Viktor was given complete artistic freedom with the films he made as part of Corvus Call Pictures. All Lady Humboldt asked in return was that she picked the monstrous creature that would be depicted in each film. This allowed Viktor to finally realise all the macabre stories that had been festering in his head since the puppet shows of Orikov. I'll let Viktor explain that creative release in another excerpt from his autobiography, Monster Man.
I finally felt accepted. Lady Humboldt saw something in me that even I could not see in myself. I thought myself a storyteller, like my forebears from my home country. But Lady Humboldt saw in me an artist. She wanted my voice to be heard, not by a few in the proscenium arch of a theatre, but to countless millions through a cinema screen. She gave my young self the tools to create the creatures of my wildest nightmares. My first film was a homage to my favorite author, Edgar Allan Poe. His Eat the Rich tale, Mask of the Red Death, formed the backbone of my story. Lady Humboldt wanted a vampire film, so I created the hideous but charismatic Count Orlok. A vain vampire scarred both emotionally and physically by his immortal life. He hides his ruined face behind a zany mask, the trickster of Commedia dell'arte. The film takes place during the Count's annual spring ball held in his opulent castle. The surrounding villages send their virginal youth to the masked ball, a rite of passage that masks a ritual sacrifice. From these virginal offerings, Count Orlok chooses just one to feed upon, rejuvenating his looks for one night so he can remove his own mask and look upon the face that he sacrificed. In return, the Count protects and blesses the villages so their crops will grow for another year. Only on the 100th spring ball, the Count falls in love with his chosen offering, Ingrid, a blonde-haired milkmaid, and cannot bring himself to feed and kill something so pure. She is even not repulsed by the Count's true face when the mask slips off during the climactic chase up the castle's tower. The film ends, as all good fairy tales do, in tragedy. Ingrid falls to her death, but this sacrifice finally ends the cycle, and Count Orlok screams up at the sky as a spring dawn breaks over the mountains. He feels the warmth of the sun on his skin for the first time in centuries, and then crumbles to ash. The curse is lifted, the masks have fallen. They say life imitates art, but with Mask of the Vampire, it felt as though art foreshadowed life. Only 4 months after the cameras stopped, Constance Truffaut, my pure Ingrid, became my wife.
James Dean, River Phoenix, Sharon Tate, Constance Truffaut. What do all these actors have in common? They were all taken from us far too soon. Yet while they lived, their talent burned brightly, and none more so than Constance Truffaut. In our next podcast, we'll explore the influence Constance had on Viktor's next 2 films, and her own remarkable, though painfully brief, career. We'll then discuss the effect her absence had on the rest of Viktor's life. So, let's bring you up to speed. I seem to be suspect number 1 in the strange case of the severed hand. I have Detective Sergeant Wyrd gunning for me, and she probably wants to shut our little podcast down. The lovely Kent police did return Elle's phone, but they deleted all the photos of the film can and its rotting contents, so that's a dead end. And now there's this. While I was writing the section you've just listened to, another unmarked package thumped onto my doormat. Same type of brown padded envelope, same lack of any address or postage. This was hand-delivered. But by whom? Maybe I should install one of those camera doorbells. Now, the £1,000,000 question is, what's inside? Elle suggested I do a live unboxing, but to be honest, I'm more than a little freaked out. I know this must sound weird coming from a man who loves horror, blogging and talking about it constantly, but it's one thing talking about it. It's a very different thing when you are starring as the final girl. Maybe I should just give this straight to the police and let DS Wyrd handle it. But rule 1 of any horror film, don't trust the authorities. Tell you what, I'll defer this decision to you all, my loyal deadheads. You can find me on my socials at ghoulish_Gavin or email me at ghoulishgavin@gmail.com. What should I do? Open this new package? Hand it over to the police? Or maybe I should just burn it on a ritual pyre? Until next time, horror hunters, crypt creepers and scream queens, I've been Ghoulish Gavin. And do have nightmares.
Gavin's Graveyard Gold is a Weirdworks production featuring Daniel Carter-Hope as Gavin Tripplehorne, Holly Calcott as DS Wyrd, recorded, mixed and edited at 5A Studios, written and directed by Paul Williams.